speaker today is Purva Kulkarni, talking about multi-omics and rare metabolic diseases. She's a bioinformatics scientist at Radboud University Medical Center, where she leads computational metabolomics research at the Translational Metabolic Laboratory. And without further ado.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and it's my real pleasure to present today here at the Crossomics Festival as a speaker. Okay, so today here I will talk about the UMD Omics framework, how we have used multi-omics to find optimal biomarkers and stratify patients who are diagnosed with rare metabolic diseases. So I don't need to tell this, but just to give a kickstart, as we are all aware, as we are getting more and more access to high throughput technologies, we are getting access to molecular data from different layers. And using molecular data from different layers, the hope is that we can take a systems biology approach to understand the processes more at a systems level and try to answer different questions. And for that, equivalently, multiple computational approaches for multi-omics data analysis as well as integration are being developed. So, and these are, again, used for answering questions like disease risk prediction, as well as subtyping, understanding disease mechanisms, therapy monitoring, and so on. So before I dive into how we have used multi-omics for rare metabolic diseases, I'm sure I want to highlight one of the multi-omics study, which is also a Crossomics demonstrator that is currently ongoing. And I'm sure many of you have passed by Casper's poster today, poster number 2, where we are talking about, or we are showing the work on iPSCs, where we want to see what's causing the variation in iPSC lines and try to differentiate this variation, so arising from diseases versus arising from other factors like clone or differentiation variability. So if you still haven't got a chance, maybe also you can have a drink together with Casper to chat about this. So, for people who don't know a lot about inherited metabolic disorders or rare metabolic diseases, so as you all know, metabolism is crucial for proper functioning of a biological system, and enzymes play a key role. However, if there is a genetic mutation, then what happens is the enzyme doesn't function properly. What this can do is that there is a buildup of substrate, and sometimes no or very less product is formed. This can lead to problem in a single metabolic pathway or can affect multiple metabolic pathways. How it manifests phenotypically is that there is a big clinical spectrum, starting from intellectual disability, seizures, also multiple organ failure, and sometimes even death. Hence, diagnosis of these disorders is crucial, and more or less I should stress on timely diagnosis is crucial so that treatment can be started, and as well as we need new biomarkers, not just for diagnosis, but also for monitoring of these conditions. So in 2019, 6 Dutch metabolic academic centers, they got together and joined forces to form the United for Metabolic Diseases, in short UMD, and the main aim was to raise awareness and accelerate and innovate diagnosis and therapy of these disorders. So there were multiple aims that were defined when UMD was set up, and one of the aims was integrated omics data analysis. And in that regard, in 2019, the MetaKids awarded the UMD Omics project, and which we now elaborated it to the UMD Omics framework, wherein the goal was biomarker identification, so optimal biomarker identification for improved diagnosis, patient stratification, and therapy monitoring, and build a computational infrastructure for aiding this process. So three medical centers, namely Radboud UMC, Amsterdam UMC, and Utrecht UMCs. The three laboratory specialists led the clinical cohorts, and I led the bioinformatics or the computational infrastructure related work for this project. So before I dive into which cohorts we used, what were the clinical questions, I would first like to focus on what this framework is about. So it starts with, so before even going into the framework, here is a picture of Dr. Dorothea Stekova, who joined our team as a data scientist and built this framework, which we are now further expanding. So we start with the disease versus control cohort, and so the idea was that you have the same number of disease, you have a defined number of disease samples, patient samples, and control samples that were sent to each center and measured at their facility. So different omics levels were measured, glycoproteomics at Radboud UMC, using a different protocol, lipidomics on a different instrument at Amsterdam UMC, metabolomics again in Amsterdam UMC, and these are untargeted, what I'm talking about. And Utrecht, again, a direct infusion mass spectrometry, so a different protocol altogether. And we got phenomics data also from the clinicians, corresponding to the cohort that we were using. And what was used as an input for this framework were the feature matrices that were generated by the pipelines that were being run at independent centers. So that meant the data, although the feature data was okay, but the format, the terminology used was all different. So the data processing and analysis happened in a very secure environment, hosted in a digital research environment hosted by Andrea. And it mainly first started with trying to standardizing the different omics feature matrices that we received. For glycoproteomics, it was conversion to glycan fractions and glycan classes as percentile fractions. For metabolomics, lipidomics, it was more or less z-score transformation and imputation of missing values. Then mainly three different layers of reporting were developed. First was standard reporting using supervised approaches like PLSDA, which helped to, say, for example, separate controls and patient samples. So this was quite good for all the individual omics layers. Then was trying to map all of this data, because we were definitely dealing with this problem of curse of dimensionality. So we tried to see if we get more insights from the data and we are able to answer the clinical questions by mapping them to a lower dimension. So this was using PCA and UMAP. And the next was data integration, where we combined all of these omics layers in a multi-omics object and performed topological data analysis-based integration. I'll come to that in a minute. To form patient similarity networks, mainly this is to find patterns in the data that may not be very evident from standard technology, standard computational approaches. And then performing correlation analysis to go back to the molecular features that mainly are responsible for these patterns. And then using a platform like SharePoint, again, only access only to people working on these cohorts, the results were shared for biological and clinical relevance interpretation. We worked with 3 cohorts. Here I will talk only about the results from selected results from 2 cohorts, given the time. So the first was X-linked adrenoleukodystrophy, and the second classical galactosemia. Of course, we are working with rare disorders. Thankfully, we are joining forces, so we still have a good number of patients here, and the clinical questions. Coming on to the first cohort, it's XALD, and the clinical question was, can we differentiate? So XALD mainly is caused by a problem in the ALDP protein. So if it's not functioning properly, what it will do is it will lead to a buildup of very long-chain fatty acids in the different organs of the body, and it will not be transferred to the peroxisome. So this can lead to a number of health problems. So the clinical question was, Can we differentiate between cerebral ALD and no cerebral ALD? So this is also one of the clinical manifestation of ALD, and adrenal insufficiency from no adrenal insufficiency, so another clinical manifestation. And these are the different omics layers with really heterogeneous features, number of features that were used. So with standard approaches, for the independent omics layers, we were very nicely able to separate the controls versus the patient cohorts, patient groups, but this did not offer us insights, even though used in a supervised manner, to give answers to our clinical questions. So then we use topological data analysis. Okay, here's a word algorithm and some mathematical stuff. I'll try to just break it down because it's useful to understand what the patient similarity networks are. So if we have data from a crowd of people, let's say age, height, BMI, omics layers, and if someone asks you, can you find patterns in this data, it becomes really, really difficult. So what this mapper algorithm does, which basically is looking at the shape of the data in different ways to try to find out hidden patterns in it. So we try to first project the data in using a topological lens, using a lens, let's say, how we use that for a camera. So if you are looking at a forest, you can change the lens to focus on the forest or a single tree or a bird. Or you can also use the same lens but have different settings to try and identify different patterns in, in the picture. Similarly here, what happens is you can use a combination of lenses, multiple lenses, or a single lens to find patterns in your data. Next step is to partition your data into different bins. Different overlapping bins. Once that is done, in each single bin, in each single bin, you cluster these points, and what you get in the end is, what you do in the end is connect these dots that you have. So one single node or a dot has multiple samples, and an edge means that there are samples that are present not just in this node, but also in this node that are similar. So taking this as a basis, we prepared patient similarity networks using clinical information. So here we clearly see that, wait, where's the laser? I cannot find the laser. Yeah, okay. So there are 3 independent clusters of nodes here. The one which is enriched in yellow in this basically is colored based on CALD. And so you can see that patients with omics profiles having CALD were really different from the omics profiles of patients with no CALD. Similarly, and so we also were able to go back to the molecular features. There were a lot of molecular features that came up that were differential in patients with CALD and no CALD, and one of the examples is this fatty acid lipid that you can see here. The next was, again, using a different lens, wherein we used the lens to color the nodes of adrenal insufficiency, and you can see, again, different clusters. The ones in which the nodes are colored in yellow, or they are most enriched with AI, or having AI, and the ones here do not have AI. So this was, again, quite nice to see these patterns present in the data. And again, we were able to link it back to our omics profile, in this case, lipidomics again. Coming on to the next cohort was galactosemia, where the clinical question was with the same, so we got some information from the clinicians where some patients had a good outcome for the same disorder and treatment, whereas the others did not have a good outcome. And can we find something in their omics profile? So can we stratify patients on their disease state, for example? So multiple omics layers, again, were measured here, glycoproteomics also this time. And so this is very small, but I would zoom in all of them, wherein first, when the spatial similarity network, so we clearly can see 3 independent clusters of nodes here, and when we try to use the disease galactosemia as a lens to color these nodes, it was evident that we got these 2 clusters of nodes which were enriched with profiles who had that disease, whereas this cluster clearly came from contained the control samples. The next was lipidomics. When we tried to use the lipidomics lens as the coloring agent for this network, it was very interesting to see that only one of these patient clusters, one of these nodes was enriched, whereas the other node had no enrichment. And well, here there were still some samples. The next was the glycoproteomics, where the other node was. So we also have the equivalent omics features that drove this. Similarly, good outcome, bad outcome. So the second cluster here was the one which was enriched in this case. And then we wanted to see if there is any gender bias happening here. So this was also quite clear because a lot of female patient samples were found in this node of clusters as compared to this cluster. So this is a very interesting way of looking at multi-omics data. And of course, this can also be applied to a single omics data to find hidden patterns. We learned a lot of lessons in this. First was if the data was already fair at the source, if the pipelines at individual centers had been standardized or were fair, we would have not lost a lot of time in preparing the data for running into these workflows. So it is possible to collaborate and work together, but verification makes it simpler, let's say. Second is having a concrete study design for a better cohort generation. Next, involving the right people, so having interdisciplinary expertise, clinicians, laboratory specialists, bioinformaticians, data stewards. They play a crucial role at each and every, at independent steps throughout multi-omics analysis, and the value of collaboration. Especially for rare disease research, it has become increasingly important to collaborate more, join forces, and get better results. Very quickly, one last thing is, what is the future? So there is UMD 2.0. So in December, the serious request, 3FM serious request was completed. You might have heard about it, contributed in it, and we had a total of 12 million euros that were collected. And 5 data pillars now have been defined for this, and out of which I'm leading the data sharing and implementation pillar. And the idea is that we should have about 50% of inborn errors of metabolism should be treatable by this time. In the end, I'm very proud to represent the UMD team here. It would not have been possible without the people here and also some people who are not in this picture, and also without a lot of people who are on this slide. Thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward for your questions.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. So we have time for one question. So yeah, I have a question. So you talked about topological aware clusterization method, right? But I've just wondered, did you compare with like more like, simplistic like KNN methods, like how you perform there? Is it really necessary to go for the topological dimension, or KNN can catch this?
Well, I think when it comes to omics data, we have a lot of features, and sometimes some patterns can remain hidden. So it's my personal belief that you can use multiple approaches to draw out information from this, and here Dorothea applied topological data analysis. That was also for the first time for us, but it did give us quite some insights. Of course, we did not apply KNN-based approach in this case, but definitely it's possible.
Okay, okay, got it. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.